Yes, I'm an anthropologist, and I pay particular attention to AI narratives, the kind of shaping stories that we tell, both about artificial intelligence, but also about ourselves, and those two things in combination. And I've been doing some work and thinking about this question in particular. It's not moving on. Move on, move on. Do I need to press the click? Technology is wonderful. It never works when I touch it. No? Do I click here? Do I click here? Does anyone know? It did work a moment ago. I have a Mercury in retrograde somewhere. No. You may only get one picture for my entire talk. Doesn't want to move. I've broken it instantly. This is a great start.
Okay. Doesn't work?
No, this is just that one, isn't it? There we go. Now it wants to work. Okay. I have this problem almost every time I give a talk. There is something about me that technology does not like. That is also a narrative, by the way. How does the technology we develop reflect perfectly or imperfectly how we understand what it is to be human? You can also flip this question the other way around and think about how does technology affect our understanding of the human? The second question, there's lots of historical precedents for. I have some examples here. Astrology, treated completely as a contemporary science and technology at the time, gave people a biological connection to the stars. Galvanism, later on, gave us the idea of resurrecting the dead through electricity. And the telegraph gave us the model of communication at long distance that the spiritualists adopted when they started holding seances. But going back to that first question, how does technology we develop reflect perfectly or imperfectly how we understand what it is to be human? With the development of artificial intelligence, we are working from a base conception of what intelligence is. The scientists who first came up with the term had a very particular understanding of that, and I've got a quote here from Robert Walensky, who was quite a foundational figure in that field, who says that they were mathematicians by training, and mathematicians do two things. They prove theorems and play chess, and they said, hey, if it proves a theorem or plays chess, it must be smart. It's a very functional attitude towards intelligence and what it can do and how it can be successful at doing those things. Well, that's a capacity of the human that they saw as enhanceable or replicable and placeable in something else, artificial intelligence. But intelligence has changing definitions and attributes in different cultural contexts and historical periods. So therefore, is the context of intelligence being ignored there, the social and shared elements that are so important to how we use human intelligence? And I came up with a rather silly, flippant maybe, thought experiment that I published a little while ago called the Elf Ranger test. Where I suggested that actually, if we're going to use games to train AI, perhaps we should be thinking about social intelligence games, sociable storytelling, collaborative games like tabletop role-playing. And I put my hands up. I'm a bit of a geek. I love Dungeons and Dragons. And this was my starting idea. You know, if we could create AI that could play and pass as a Dungeons and Dragons player, where success isn't necessarily about optimizing for the best results in terms of scores, but actually enjoying the experience, perhaps we'd get closer to something like an equivalent to our intelligence. Now, some people have come back and said, well, if you could do that, you've basically solved artificial general intelligence, so maybe this is a way off. But the idea of a test in artificial general intelligence as being provable by a test has captured people's imaginations, and as I say, I'm very interested in the stories we tell about artificial intelligence. So how about this one? I'm not scared of a computer passing the Turing test. I'm terrified of one that intentionally fails it. There's a nice combination there, not only of the historical Turing test, but this fear of what artificial intelligence can be and do. And I don't actually, for once, have a picture of a Terminator in my presentation, but almost every time there is a press story, and there's been another one recently, about artificial intelligence and what the future might bring, the Terminator pops up. We have these dystopic, fear-laden AI narratives, and they're very impactful. Where does this come from? Well, one suggestion might be Masahiro Mori's work on the Uncanny Valley, if you're familiar with this, that there is a stage at which human likeness becomes close enough, but not quite close enough, and actually causes a feeling of disturbance. It affects us emotionally. We feel fear. This is not purely physical, but obviously examples with the sort of form of physicality are useful. So some of you will find these more disturbing than others. Some of you may actually work in CGI digital humanity fields and actually find these quite standard and not too scary at all, but some people find the nearness to humanity, but not complete humanity, a little bit scary. And I think this sense of the uncanny comes from objects and concepts and potential beings that transverse categories, that unstabilize categories that we thought were once stable. And I draw a parallel to liminal creatures, things that are both human and non-human, or wise and bestial, or dead and alive. There's a ghost there as well. Things that don't sit into settled categories. And I think AI can be one of these things too. Murray Shanahan's talked about something called conscious exotica. He's a technologist. He actually works to create artificial intelligence. And he locates this potential space where human likeness is relatively low, but consciousness is quite high. So something that has something like artificial general intelligence, or what we would term consciousness or pure consciousness, but doesn't seem very much like us, and that might be a scary space. Now, we already have existing cosmologies of other than human persons. There's rivers that are treated with personhood. There's objects in Shinto and Buddhism and other religious and cultural contexts. So why is this seemingly uncanny feeling arising because of artificial intelligence? Well, I like to draw on the work of Mary Douglas, who came up with this concept of dirt being matter out of place in her book Purity and Danger, where things that do not fall neatly into categories need to be dealt with. We have to come up with stories and explanations of what they are and what we must do with them. And likewise, Julia Kristeva's work on the abject, what disturbs identity, system, and order, what does not respect borders, positions, and rules. AI, I feel, has a potential to be mind out of place. Our perception of AI as a mind, accurately or inaccurately, again, we're talking about narratives and stories, can lead to fear-based reactions, which can either enhance or detract from our advances in technology. Jim Al-Khalali, the new head of the British Science Association, has just been reported in a big speech as starting off his new role, saying that the biggest problem for the development of artificial intelligence technology is people's fear of what it could become. So this idea of mind out of place, I think, is a way of exploring where that fear comes from. It's the disturbing effect of seeing an aspect of ourselves elsewhere than expected or reflected back to us inaccurately. And I think AI represents a very contemporary example of that. Another example, which I think is quite powerful, as perhaps the first modern example, would be Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster. Someone's going to call me up on that if I say Frankenstein. That the monster represents, again, something that does not sit firmly in categories. It's both dead and alive. It's both born and made. It sort of takes apart our assumptions about what the human being is. So it's not surprising, perhaps, and these are examples that I haven't created, these are artworks by other people, the synergy between Frankenstein and artificial intelligence. This year is the anniversary of Mary Shelley's novel. I've already given about 3 talks on AI and Frankenstein. People are seeing the parallels and the similarities, not just in assumptions about mad scientists going to ruin the world with a technology that they don't understand, but questions about personhood and createdness and being born and made. So in summary, where the reflection fails, where we have aspirations for what artificial intelligence could be, and where we have assumptions about what the human is, and they aren't worked out completely in artificial intelligence, I think that's an interesting space for exploring anthropologically and narratively where we understand ourselves. We can look back on ourselves and reflect on what we think it means to be human. Thank you very much.